There is a way for your Social Security check to get smaller that has nothing to do with Medicare premiums, nothing to do with taxes, and nothing to do with anything you did this year. It goes back to a loan, maybe one you took out in your 30s, maybe one you co-signed for a child. And here is the part that catches people, because I have read the letters. Nobody calls you first. The check simply arrives smaller 1 month, and you sit there doing math at the kitchen table trying to figure out what changed. So let me give you the mechanism, precisely, because precision is the whole point of this channel. If you are in default on a federal student loan, the Treasury can offset your benefit by up to 15%. But there is a floor, and the floor is $750 a month, and the way those two numbers interact is not what most people assume. Today, I am going to walk you through the exact formula, tell you why that floor is the number it is, and give you the 3 doors that are still open right now while collections are paused. I am Ray, and this is Social Security Decoded, where we take one rule at a time and take it apart until it makes sense. Let us start with the machinery, because most people have never heard its name. The tool is called the Treasury Offset Program. It is not run by the Social Security Administration, and that surprises people. Social Security is not deciding to reduce your benefit. What happens is that a federal agency you owe money to, in this case the Department of Education, refers your debt to the Treasury Department, and Treasury intercepts federal payments headed your way and applies them to the debt. Your Social Security retirement or disability benefit is one of the payments it can reach. That distinction matters for a practical reason. If this happens to you, calling Social Security will get you sympathy and very little else, because the people who can actually stop it work somewhere else. Now, the formula. This is the part almost everybody gets wrong, including some articles I read while preparing this. The rule is not simply 15%. There are 2 limits, and the one that binds is whichever takes less. Limit 1 is 15% of your monthly benefit. Limit 2 is whatever amount sits above $750 a month. The first $750 of your benefit is protected by statute and cannot be touched for this. So they take the smaller of those 2 numbers. Let me run it, because numbers make this real. Say your benefit is $2,000 a month. 15% of that is $300. The amount above the floor is $1,250. The smaller number is $300, so $300 is what can be offset, and you keep $1,700. Now say your benefit is $800 a month. 15% would be $120, but the amount above the floor is only $50. The smaller number is $50, so $50 is the maximum that can be taken, not $120. And if your benefit is $750 or less, the answer is 0. There is nothing above the floor to reach. That is the whole formula, and I want you to notice something about it. The people with the smallest checks are protected the most in dollar terms, which is the humane part of the design. But look at where the protection stops, because now we have to talk about that $750 number, and this is where I stop being neutral. That floor was set in 1996. It has never been adjusted for inflation, not once in 3 decades. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, in a report devoted to exactly this issue, points out that $750 a month is about $400 below the monthly poverty threshold for one person. Think about what that means in practice. The law says it is protecting a floor of subsistence, but the number chosen to represent subsistence was chosen when a gallon of milk cost about $2.50, and it has been frozen ever since. So a protection that was thin in 1996 is now, in real terms, a fraction of what it was meant to be. I am not telling you that to make you angry at anyone in particular. I am telling you because when you hear the first 750 is protected, you should hear it accurately. That is a statutory line, not a living wage. All right, who is actually in the line of fire here? This is where the data is genuinely surprising. According to the CFPB, roughly 452,000 Social Security recipients are in default on federal student loans and could be exposed to offsets. Now, the profile of those borrowers. Among older borrowers, meaning 50 and up, the typical offset is around 15% of the benefit, and the typical dollar amount withheld is a little over $140 a month. $140. If you are watching this and thinking that does not sound catastrophic, I would ask you to sit with it for a second, because for a household running on a benefit check, $140 a month is the electric bill. It is the copays. It is the difference between filling all the prescriptions and picking two. And here is the detail that reframes the whole conversation. About 43% of those older borrowers have held these loans for 20 years or more. About 60% took out the loans in their 30s and 40s. So these are not people who just graduated. These are loans that have been following someone for 2 or 3 decades, often growing through interest and collection costs. There is one more figure I want to give you, and then I will stop with the statistics. There are nearly 90,000 borrowers aged 81 and older, carrying an average of about $29,000 in federal student loan debt. 81 and older. Let that sit for a moment. Let me answer the question that is forming in a lot of heads right now, which is a completely reasonable one. How can a loan from 30 years ago still be alive? Federal student loans do not work like most other debts people carry. A credit card balance eventually falls off, gets written off, or gets settled. Federal student debt is different in kind. It follows the borrower, and in default, it accumulates interest and collection costs, which is why the balance a person remembers signing for and the balance on the letter today can look like two different numbers entirely. That is also why so many of the people in this group are genuinely confused rather than negligent. Somebody borrowed $6,000 in 1990, paid on it for a while, hit a rough patch, lost track of a servicer that changed hands 3 times, and now there is a letter with a number on it that does not match any memory they have. And there is a second group that deserves a mention because they almost never see this coming. Parents. If you borrowed for a child's education under a parent loan, that loan is yours, not your child's, yours. It does not transfer when they graduate, and it does not transfer when they get a good job and offer to take it over informally. If it goes into default, it is your benefit that the offset reaches, not theirs. I have seen more than one household where the child has been paying the parent every month for years, and nobody realized the loan was still in default because the payments were going to the wrong place. Let me also clear up 2 things people mix up constantly because getting these straight changes who you call. The first mix-up is between an offset and a court garnishment. A garnishment usually involves a court and a judgment. This is not that. There is no judge, no hearing, no lawsuit. It is one federal agency telling another federal agency to redirect a payment. That is why it can feel so silent when it happens. The second mix-up is thinking, Social Security decided this. They did not. Your benefit amount has not changed. What changed is that a slice of it is being redirected before it reaches your account. On paper, you are still entitled to the same benefit. This sounds like a technicality, and it is not, because it tells you which door to knock on. And let me run one more number, because I want the middle case on the table too. Say your benefit is $1,500 a month. 15% of that is $225. The amount above the floor is $750. The smaller of the two is $225, so that is the cap on what can be offset, and you keep $1,275. Now compare that to the $800 case from earlier, where the maximum was $50. Same rule, same percentage on paper, and the practical outcome is completely different depending on where your check sits relative to that floor. That is the piece nobody explains, and it is exactly why I did not want to just say 15% and move on. Now let us talk about timing, because there is a window open right now and it will not stay open. On January 16th of this year, the Department of Education announced that it was delaying involuntary collections on federal student loans. That includes administrative wage garnishment, and it includes the Treasury Offset Program, which is the machinery we have been discussing. The stated reason was time to roll out a new repayment plan. As of my recording this, there is no firm publicly announced restart date specifically for Social Security offsets. What people who follow this closely are watching is the second half of this year. I want to be careful here because you deserve precision rather than drama. I am not telling you a date. I am telling you that the pause is real, that it is temporary, and that every one of the remedies I am about to describe takes months, not days. So here are the 3 doors. Door 1 is loan rehabilitation. If you make 9 on-time payments over a period of 10 months, the default status is removed from that loan. That is the door most people use, and the payments in a rehabilitation arrangement are supposed to be based on what you can actually afford, not a fixed number pulled out of the air. 9 payments over 10 months is why I keep saying that starting in August is different from starting in December. Door 2 is a total and permanent disability discharge. If you have a qualifying disability, federal student loans can be discharged entirely. Many older borrowers who qualify have never applied, sometimes because nobody ever told them the option existed. If you are receiving Social Security disability benefits, this is a conversation worth having with the Department of Education, not with me. Door 3 is a financial hardship objection. The department has a process for reducing or suspending an offset when a borrower documents that it creates a financial hardship. Documentation means your income and your expenses written down. It is paperwork, and it is not fun, and it is also the fastest of the 3 doors when the offset has already started. Notice what all 3 doors have in common. Every one of them requires you to make contact first. None of them happens automatically, and none of them is triggered by the offset itself. The machine does not check whether you can afford it before it starts. So what should you actually do this week? 3 things, and none of them takes very long. First, find out whether you are even in this group, because a lot of people are carrying a vague worry rather than a real debt. Federal student loans are tracked in the federal student aid system. You can log in and see every federal loan in your name and its current status. If everything says current or paid in full, you can close this tab and go enjoy your afternoon. Second, if you find a loan in default, write down 2 things before you call anyone: the loan servicer's name and the outstanding balance. Having those 2 facts in front of you cuts a 40-minute phone call roughly in half. Third, if you are the person who already saw a smaller check, request the offset notice and read what it says about hardship. That notice exists. It has instructions on it. And a surprising number of people never open it because they assume it is more bad news rather than a form with a route out. And if you have a parent or a sibling who might be in this group, this is one of those things people are ashamed to bring up. Nobody wants to say out loud at 78 that they still owe on a degree from 1985. If you are the one who watched this video, you are the one who can start that conversation without judgment. One more thing before the recap, and it is about the emotional part, which I usually leave alone but not here. Of everything I cover on this channel, this is the topic where people write to me with the most shame in the message. Not confusion. Shame. They apologize to me, a stranger, for a loan they took out to try to improve their life or their child's life. So let me say the obvious thing out loud. Taking on a student loan in your 30s or 40s, often while working and raising a family, was not a reckless act. It was usually the opposite. And the fact that the balance outran the paycheck is a story about how the cost of that education moved, not a story about your character. The reason I bring this up in a video about a formula is practical, not sentimental. Shame is why people do not open the notice. Shame is why they do not call the servicer. Shame is why nearly 90,000 people over 80 are carrying this quietly. Every door I described requires somebody to make a phone call, and shame is the thing standing between a lot of people and that phone call. Let me bring this in for a landing. Here is the honest shape of it. This is a real mechanism. It affects a real and identifiable group of people, and the protection built into it was set at a level that has not moved since 1996. That is worth knowing, and it is worth being a little angry about. But this is also one of the few situations in the benefits world where the individual actually has leverage, because every one of the 3 doors is available to any borrower who asks. The catch is that they all take time, and right now, while collections are paused, is the cheapest time to start there will ever be. You do not need to solve a 30-year-old loan this week. You need to find out whether it exists, and if it does, to knock on one of the 3 doors. Now I want to hear from you in the comments, and I will ask a specific question because I know this topic carries shame with it. If you have been through an offset, what did the notice actually look like when it arrived? And how long did it take before you understood what was happening? That answer will be worth more to the next person than anything I can put in a script. And if you know someone with a check under $1,000 a month, send this to them, because for those households the formula matters most and the information reaches them least. The usual note. I am not a financial advisor, and this is education about how the system works, not advice for your situation. The rules, the amounts, and the forms change, so confirm anything here with the Department of Education or Social Security directly before you act on it. I am Ray. This is Social Security Decoded, and I will see you in the next one.